Cold kills faster than bullets. Armies learned that the hard way long before missiles, satellites, and smart gear ever entered the picture. And here's the wild part. One of the toughest answers to cold wasn't high-tech, wasn't lightweight, and definitely wasn't comfortable. Yet it worked. Relentlessly. While modern sleeping bags promise warmth, packability, and innovation, many of them still fold under pressure. Tonight on Zero Hour World War II, we're breaking down the Cold War bedroll that refused to fail and why, decades later, modern sleeping bags still struggle to live up to its brutal legacy. Let's get straight into it. Born from World War II lessons. By the time the Cold War kicked off, militaries had already paid a heavy price for ignoring sleep systems. During World War II, exposure claimed thousands of lives. Frostbite sidelined entire units. Soldiers could fight without food for days, but without sleep and warmth they collapsed fast. That reality shaped everything that came next. Cold War planners didn't design bedrolls for comfort, they designed them for survival, period. The result was a modular, overbuilt sleeping system that looked crude but delivered results in the worst environments on Earth. Arctic zones, mountain passes, frozen forests, places where failure meant death. The bedroll philosophy that changed everything. The Cold War bedroll wasn't about one fancy sleeping bag. It was about layers working together. Thick outer shells blocked wind and moisture. Inner insulation stayed warm even when damp. Liners trapped body heat without compressing. Every component could function alone or together depending on conditions. This wasn't accidental. Engineers knew insulation fails when it gets wet, so they chose materials that kept insulating even when soaked. Cotton canvas, wool blends, synthetic fills that didn't collapse under pressure. Heavy, yes. Reliable, absolutely. Modern bags chase low weight. Cold War bedrolls chased certainty. Why weight didn't matter back then. Today, weight is king. Ultralight gear dominates outdoor culture. But Cold War soldiers weren't weekend hikers. They moved with vehicles, sleds, or short patrol ranges in extreme cold. Carrying extra weight was acceptable if it meant staying alive overnight. Those bedrolls often weighed twice as much as modern sleeping bags, but they delivered consistent warmth night after night. No fragile baffles, no thin shells tearing on ice. No delicate down clusters losing loft. When the temperature dropped below -30, the bedroll didn't care. Moisture was the real enemy. Here's a fact most modern gear still struggles with. Cold doesn't kill you. Moisture does. Cold War bedrolls were designed around that truth. They assumed condensation would happen. They assumed snow would melt. They assumed rain would find its way inside. And they planned for it. Wool insulation retains up to 80% of its warmth when wet. Heavy cotton shells breathe without trapping sweat. Venting was intentional, not accidental. You could wake up damp and still warm. Modern sleeping bags, especially down-filled ones, collapse when moisture enters the system. Once loft is gone, warmth is gone. And in freezing conditions, drying a bag is often impossible. Durability over decades, not seasons. Cold War gear was built for storage and reuse. Some of these bedrolls sat in depots for 20 or 30 years and still functioned when issued. The stitching was oversized. Zippers were thick and simple. There were no micro coatings and no fragile membranes. Compare that to many modern sleeping bags that, well, lose performance after just a few seasons. Fabric delaminates, insulation shifts, and zippers fail in the cold. Lightweight materials save grams, but honestly, they sacrifice lifespan. The Cold War bedroll wasn't meant to be replaced. It was meant to endure. Comfort was never the goal. Let's be honest. Cold War bedrolls were not cozy. They were stiff, bulky, sometimes itchy, but comfort was a luxury soldiers just couldn't afford. Modern sleeping bags prioritize comfort ratings that, often assume ideal conditions. Dry air, proper ground insulation, perfect setup. The Cold War bedroll assumed none of that. It assumed you'd sleep on frozen ground, in bad weather, after exhausting movement, and still wake up functional. So why do modern sleeping bags still fail? Why hasn't technology, just solved this completely? The thing is, modern sleeping bags are really designed for consumers, not for survival. They rely on lab-tested temperature ratings instead of planning for the absolute worst-case scenarios. Most of them optimize for pack size over real resilience, and honestly, they assume you'll be able to dry your gear, replace damaged equipment, or just retreat when conditions turn ugly. The Cold War bedroll, on the other hand, assumed you had no backup at all. That mindset, it makes all the difference. So, what can modern users actually learn from all this? Well, here's the actionable part. If you camp, hike, or prepare for emergencies in cold environments, don't just chase the warmest rating on paper. Really, think system, not just product. Layer your sleep setup. Use insulation that can handle moisture. Prioritize durability, even if it means carrying a bit more weight. And, accept that extra weight if the conditions demand it. Most importantly, never rely on a single piece of gear to save you from the cold. That's a lesson written in frozen ground and, plenty of sleepless nights. So, why does this matter on Zero Hour World War II? Well, this isn't just nostalgia, it's applied history. The Cold War bedroll represents a mindset shaped by, World War II realities and the high-stakes environment of the Cold War. Back then, when failure meant national consequences, your gear had to work every single time. Sure, modern designs are impressive, but when things go wrong, old-school thinking still wins. And honestly, that's the kind of truth most gear reviews just won't tell you. If this deep dive helped you see history through a new lens, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Share this with someone who thinks newer always means better. And let Zero Hour World War II keep bringing you the hidden systems that shaped survival, warfare, and the cold realities of history.